She locked her 60-year-old mother-in-law in a barn to steal her farm. She had no idea. Joy was already gone. If you enjoy stories about family betrayal, karma, and ordinary people who turn out to be smarter than anyone gave them credit for, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Now, let's get into Joy's story. Joy was 60 years old and had lived on the same farm her entire life. It was the only home she had ever known, the place where she took her first steps, learned to plant a garden, and eventually grew old surrounded by the same fields and the same mountain views that had watched over her since childhood. She never once dreamed of living anywhere else. There was something about the way the morning light spread across the hills, or the way the hay swayed in the wind during summer, that made her feel like she belonged exactly where she was. Joy leased part of her 200 acres to a farmer down the road who used it for his hay operation. The rest of the land she kept for herself, tending a garden every spring that burst with her favorite flowers and rows of vegetables that she sold at the local farmers market on weekends. It was simple work, honest work, and it gave her a quiet kind of joy that matched her name. She had never needed much. The farm gave her everything she wanted. Neighbors sometimes asked Joy if she ever got lonely out there, living by herself in a big farmhouse with acres of empty fields stretching in every direction. She always laughed the question off. She was never truly alone. There were chickens to feed, fences to mend, and a garden that demanded attention every single day. She had her routines, her coffee on the porch every morning, her walks along the fence line every evening, and her weekends at the farmer's market where regular customers had become something close to friends over the years. It was a full life, even if it looked quiet from the outside. Joy had one son, Richard, who had grown up to become a successful real estate agent. He did well for himself, but he always seemed to be chasing something bigger. He dreamed of having millions of dollars, of living in a mansion, of being seen as someone important. He married a woman named Tiffany, who did not work. Her only real occupation, as far as anyone could tell, was shopping. She filled her days with expensive purchases and her closets with things she rarely wore twice. Joy never liked Tiffany. She would be the first to admit it. From the very first day they met, something about the way Tiffany looked at her and looked at the farm felt off. It was not the kind of dislike that faded with time either. The feeling between them was mutual, and both women knew it, even if they rarely said it out loud. For Richard's sake, Joy tolerated her. She smiled through holiday dinners and family gatherings, and she never let her true feelings show too plainly. She loved her son, and she was willing to keep the peace for him. The real trouble began the day a property developer showed up at Joy's farm, driving a shiny truck that looked out of place on the gravel road. He walked her land with a folder of glossy renderings, describing a future subdivision full of massive homes, wide streets, and manicured lawns where her fields and garden currently stood. He offered her $3 million for the land, on the spot, no negotiating needed on his end. Joy did not hesitate. She told him plainly that the farm was family land, that it meant more to her than any amount of money ever could, and that she had no interest in selling. The developer tried a few more angles before he finally gave up and drove away, but the seed had already been planted in the wrong direction. Word travels fast in a small family, and it was not long before Richard found out about the offer. He drove out to see his mother that same week and spent an entire afternoon trying to convince her to change her mind. He painted a picture of a comfortable retirement somewhere warm, somewhere without fences to mend or gardens to weed. He told her that $3 million would let her live comfortably anywhere she wanted, that she could finally relax instead of working the land at her age, and that it would help him and Tiffany build the dream home they had always talked about. He brought it up again over dinner a few days later, and again on a phone call the following week, each time a little more insistent than the last. Joy listened patiently every time, but her answer never changed. She was happy exactly where she was, and no amount of money was going to move her off land that had been in her family for generations. Richard eventually stopped bringing it up directly, at least in front of her. But Tiffany did not let it go so easily. If anything, the silence from Richard's side only meant Tiffany decided to take matters into her own hands. One afternoon, not long after that conversation, Tiffany pulled into Joy's driveway with her sister, riding shotgun. She stepped out of the car carrying a folder stuffed with papers, and it did not take Joy long to realize what it was. Buried among the documents was a power of attorney form, one that would have given Tiffany and Richard control over Joy's affairs, including her land. Joy told her flatly that she had no intention of signing anything. Tiffany's expression shifted immediately, the polite mask falling away. She told Joy that they would see about that. Then she said something Joy would never forget, calling her an old lady who was not going to cheat her out of her dream home. Before Joy could react, Tiffany and her sister grabbed her by the arms. Despite her protests, the two women forced her toward the old barn near the house and pushed her inside. Tiffany stood in the doorway and told her she could go without food or water until she agreed to sign the papers. Then she snapped a padlock, shut on the door, and drove off with her sister, leaving Joy locked inside alone. What Tiffany did not know was that Joy had grown up on that farm, and she knew every inch of that old barn better than anyone alive. The moment she heard the car pull away down the gravel road, Joy walked calmly to the back wall, found the loose boards she had known about since she was a little girl, and slipped right through them. Within minutes, she was back inside her own house, safe and completely unbothered. She took a long, relaxing shower. She made herself a nice dinner. She ate at her own table in her own kitchen, and then she went to bed as if nothing unusual had happened at all. The next morning, Joy woke up early, made herself a full breakfast, and grabbed her phone before heading back out to the barn. She slipped through the same loose boards, back into the space where Tiffany believed she had been suffering all night. Before settling in to wait, Joy called the local sheriff's office. She calmly explained exactly what her daughter-in-law had done, and she asked the deputies to arrive at 10 o'clock that morning. She knew Tiffany was planning to come back around 9:30, and Joy wanted everything on record before help arrived. She set her phone to record, tucked it away where it could capture everything, and settled onto a bale of hay to wait. Right on schedule, at 9:30, Tiffany's car came crunching up the gravel drive with her sister beside her once again. Joy stayed exactly where she was, lying on the hay bales, looking every bit as worn down as Tiffany expected her to be after a long night locked away. Tiffany peered through the gap in the barn door and asked if Joy was finally ready to sign the papers so they would let her out. Joy's phone quietly captured every word. After making her threats one more time, Tiffany and her sister walked away from the barn and locked the door behind them again, fully confident that Joy was trapped and desperate. The moment their voices faded, Joy moved quickly. She took an old bale of hay, set it on fire, and slipped back out through the same loose board she had been using the whole time. The dry hay caught fast, and smoke and flame began pouring out of the old wooden structure within moments. By the time Tiffany realized what was happening and ran back toward the barn, the heat was already too intense to get near the padlocked door. She stood there, unable to help, unable to open the lock, while the barn burned. Joy, meanwhile, was standing safely outside, completely unharmed, watching from a distance. When the sheriff arrived, exactly when Joy had asked him to, he found Tiffany screaming and sobbing near the burning barn, insisting over and over that she never meant for anyone to die, that it was all a terrible, tragic accident. That was when Joy walked up quietly behind her daughter-in-law and turned on her phone, letting the recorded confession play for the responding deputies to hear. The color drained from Tiffany's face as her own words echoed back at her, admitting to locking Joy inside and threatening to starve her out until she signed away the farm. Tiffany and her sister were arrested on the spot and taken away in handcuffs. In the days that followed, investigators discovered that Richard had known about the entire scheme from the very beginning. He had not only known, he had done nothing to stop it. He was arrested as well, and just like that, the son Joy had raised and loved her whole life became another name on a police report. The trial did not take long. The evidence, especially Joy's own recording, left little room for doubt. Tiffany, her sister, and Richard were all convicted and sent to prison. Joy's farm was safe. Her land, her garden, her fields, and her mountain views all remained exactly as they had always been, untouched by bulldozers or developers or greedy relatives with dollar signs in their eyes. If anything, Joy found herself appreciating her home even more after coming so close to losing it. She walked her fields slower now, noticing details she had rushed past for years, the way the light hit the mountains just before sunset, the particular smell of fresh-cut hay drifting in from her neighbor's land. She planted her garden that spring with even more care than usual, filling it with the same flowers her own mother had once grown in that same soil. The old barn was gone, but Joy did not mourn it much. It had served its purpose one last time, and she found a strange kind of peace in that. She eventually had a small shed built in its place, nothing fancy, just enough room for her garden tools and a place to sit in the shade on hot afternoons. Life on the farm slowly returned to its normal rhythm. The farmer down the road kept leasing his section for hay. The market stall on weekends kept her busy and connected to the community that had rallied around her once the story got out. Word spread through the small town quickly, and more than a few neighbors stopped by just to tell her how proud they were of the way she had handled herself. From time to time, letters arrived from Richard, written from behind prison walls, begging his mother for forgiveness. He writes about regret, about missing the farm, about wanting to make things right someday. Joy reads them, folds them carefully, and sets them aside in a drawer she rarely opens. She has made her peace with the fact that some bridges, once burned, are never meant to be rebuilt, no matter how many letters arrive asking for a second chance. Trust, once it is broken that badly, does not simply grow back because someone says the right words on paper. Her farm is still hers. Her land is still safe. Her garden still blooms every spring exactly the way it always has. And for Joy, sitting on her porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the same mountains she has looked at her whole life, that is more than enough. If this story hit home for you, or if you just love seeing karma come around in the end, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more true-to-life stories just like this one. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.